Actually, you know, I take that back. We wouldn't actually have to get rid of these. If we wanted, we could specify new values for these variables in our new sub, and that would allow us control over those. But for now, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to say public sub new, and I'm going to give this a name. All inherited screens need a name, so we're going to call this one main menu, and give it a state as active. And this is the spot where we are actually going to add new entries to whatever menu screen we want to draw. So we can say add entries here. Before we do that, we're probably going to want to set up a sub to actually add those entries. So let's go ahead and do that next. We'll just drop down here a little and type public sub add entry, and we're going to need a couple parameters on here to specify the values of those entries that we define in the class. So the first one, of course, is our text as a string value, and the next one will be enabled as a Boolean value, so we can control which entries are enabled and what they say as we add them here. So we will say dim entry as a menu entry. Oops. Creates a new instance of that class, and we'll say entry equals new menu entry. And with entry, we'll add some values. The text value is going to be equal to our text parameter, so we can pass that down from the constructor. And enabled equals enabled. So we can populate the class with these parameter values. And finally, once we've defined that, we can then add it to our entries list that we created. So we'll say entries.add entry. Now we can actually add some menu entries here. Say add entry. For our first menu, let's go ahead and do the classic new game. That'll be the text on our menu, and we want that to be enabled. Excuse me. And let's add another entry. This one will say continue game. And we're going to set this one to false, because we haven't created a game, so we don't want to be able to continue a game. And you can add logic to that later on. Once we kind of go through these steps, you'll get an idea of how to do that. What main menu is complete without options? We'll enable that. And we'll add one more final entry, credits. And we'll enable that. So what we'll end up doing here, since we don't actually have a game to go to, or option screens, or credits, we're just going to set some things to invoke down here in the handle input sub. So that will be our next sub here. Now, since menus are input driven, this is really where the bulk of our work is going to be going. So we'll say public overrides. Oh, come on. handle input. It's going to get rid of that here. So first up, we're going to want to handle our menu up. So we'll say menu up. We'll say if input dot key pressed keys up arrow, or if you're like me and you like to use your WASD keys, say input dot key pressed W. Alright, so whenever we press this, it will invoke our menu movement. Now we're going to say menu select minus equals 1. So we're going to decrement our menu value. Now we have to handle it. We don't want to go really into the negative values, so we have to say if it's less than 0, then we want it to cycle to the back of the menu or to the top of the menu. I guess if we're moving up, it's going to be the bottom of the menu. You get the point. So we're going to say if menu select is less than 0, then menu select equals entries, that's our entry list, dot count minus 1. So it's going to go to the end of the entries list and grab the last item, creating a nice cycling effect. Now, another thing we need to do is say if there's a disabled menu entry, we want to skip over it. So we'll say skip disabled entries. And to do this, we will say do until entries menu select. So we're actually going to use our menu select as an index value here. Dot enabled equals true, meaning that this will continue to loop through the entries until it finds the next enabled entry. So it'll just skip over any of them that are set to false. And then once this is true, we're going to do this until true. So we'll say menu select minus equals 1. So it's going to continue to decrement. And again, if menu select is less than 0, we don't want it to go into the negative, so we're going to go back to the end of the list. Then menu select equals entries dot count minus 1. And it will loop. Alright, now we are ready to handle our downward menu, much in the same way. Really, we can just grab this whole section here and copy it and paste it, since it's going to be almost identical. The only thing that's going to change are the operators, because we're going to be incrementing this time to move downward. So in this case, the first thing we will change, well, let's go ahead and change our little note to ourselves. We're going to be moving down this time, so we want the down arrow key to be watched, and also in the WASD we're going to use S, which is generally down. And this time going to be incrementing our menu select. And instead of looking to see if it's 0 to keep it from going negative, we're going to have to kind of reverse this effect and say if the menu select is greater than entries dot count minus 1, then instead of going to the top or to the bottom, we want to go to the top. So we'll say menu select equals 0. I hope that's making sense. If we hit the end of the list, we want it to cycle back to the beginning. Alright, so alright, and again we want to skip the disabled entries, so we will do until the menu select dot enabled equals true, and we have to change this operator to increment so it's not going backwards. And this line here is going to be identical to this guy. So we can just copy that and paste it down here. So you don't have to watch me type all that out. I know that would be pretty painful. Okay, so next we have to be able to invoke the menu item to actually make it do something when it's selected. So I'm going to say invoke menu item. Let's say if input dot key pressed keys dot enter. So when we press the enter key, then we're going to do a case select on our menu select. So we're going to say select case menu select, so it knows what index we're on in our entries list. Then we can say case 0, and we can really just kind of fill these in here. Case 1, case 2. We have 4 entries that we added up above, so we're going to want, you know, an action to occur with each one of those. So I generally do, we're going to want to do 0 through 3. That gives us 4 different possibilities. So if it's the first one, which we know is new game, then we need it to do something. What we would normally be doing here is unloading one screen and then loading a new screen. It could be, in the case of options, it'd be an option screen, or in the case of new game, it might start a new game dialog, or just, you know, dump you into the world screen or something like that. Just to test it, and, you know, so we know that it works, we're just going to say give us a message box. You just started a new game. Alright. Now we need, now this one, remember, this one was disabled. This was our continue game. We could say you continue your adventure, but it's kind of a moot point since it's disabled. Message box for this one, this is options, I believe. Add entry options is the third one. We can send ourselves a silly little message here, say as a programmer you have many options. And finally, message box, the credits of the game. This game was created by, where's my B key? Me. Alright, so that's really all we need to do for our input handling. So finally, what we need to do with any screen is tell our screen manager how to draw it. So our final sub will be public overrides, yay, I typed it right that time, sub draw. I'll go ahead and get rid of my mind-based draw. Okay, I'm going to pause here for one moment.